Record on this computer. Okay, I think we're a go. So, hi, Dr. Susan Kaye here in sunny Austin. It was pouring in tornadoes the last 3 days, right? Did you get it?
It totally was. It totally was.
Oh my goodness, but it is a beautiful day, and I'm here
Yeah.
with my dear heart friend and colleague and soldier in this walk that we're walking about touch and intimacy and how we can better not just love each other, but really understand like what is beneath the skin. Even that
Right.
touching the skin gets us beneath the skin, right, Piff?
Yeah,
When we do it right.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
she's going to talk to us about that and all that. You introduce yourself as to what you want folks to know and go from
Yeah.
there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I'm excited for our conversation. And my name, as Susan said, is Epiphany Jordan. I live in Austin, Texas, and I am on a mission to redesign human touch. I feel like the way that we approach touch with having it be something for adults that's most specifically done between romantic partners is not working for most of us. It's definitely not working for single people, and it's not working for a lot of couples who are, in a romantic relationship as well. And I would like to see us kind of get to the point where we're thinking about touch as something that's a part of wellness, just like diet or exercise or sleep or drinking water, movement, all these different things that go to making our bodies healthy. And let's see, what else do y'all need to know about me? For from 2013 to 2020, I had a hands-on touch business called Karuna Sessions, which was a ritual of human connection that culminated in the client being held in between two practitioners in a way that mimics the feeling of being held by your mother as an infant. And then about 2 years ago, I published a book called Somebody Hold Me, The Single Person's Guide to Nurturing Human Touch, which Susan has a copy there. And it's a guide for people about how to get your touch needs met when you're not in a romantic relationship, because it's hard for people. And today, Susan and I are specifically going to talk about this idea of getting back to human touch as we start to open up and come through the pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of people who've gone an entire year without having another human being touch them, and people have a lot of doubts and fears and questions and uneasiness about it. And so we're just going to talk about that a little bit.
All
So,
right.
what do you want to know about it, Susan? I mean, I'm sure you've had conversations about this with your clients and with your other practitioners that you work with. And,
Yeah.
you're probably hearing as much about it as I am. So,
Yeah, well, I think it's one of the silver linings actually of the pandemic where we realized how much touch means to us and that if we're single and we couldn't get out and get touch, or if we were coupled and the touch wasn't working and it brought up
yeah.
some things about our relationships that we need to look at. So I think we're really poised to bring this message in a bigger way, Piff, than we even have been.
Yeah, I
So
mean, there's lots of people out there, touch wasn't working for a lot of us even before the pandemic. And I think you're right. I think for a lot of people, it made them, like, the absence of it made them realize how important it was and how much they missed it. And, and I think, as with a lot of things, one of the things I've heard the pandemic described as is the great pause or the great reset. And obviously, not everybody had the opportunity to do that. I mean, there were tons of people out there, both essential workers and people who were still working their, jobs from home or what have you, who um, didn't have a chance to pause. But it's like one of the things I think about this idea of having a pause or a reset is that we can look at things that were or weren't working before the pandemic and go, okay, I didn't like this before. Now that we've had a pause, I want to do this differently. And so it's a great opportunity for people to look at human touch differently. I mean, I think it's an area that's super ripe for being overhauled and for people to approach it differently. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
terrific. I agree. I agree. So what is it that I know you have some other plans as far as schooling, that you're moving on with your education.
Hmm.
Um, Tell us more about what that is that you're seeking and why, like the why of it, what you're hoping to bring to our mental health system. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I was really surprised that this whole thing kind of came out of the pandemic for me. I mean, I'd had this idea for years, which is that I really want to create public health programs that use touch as a wellness practice, and that looks very different depending on who you are, your circumstances in life. It could be about your age or your gender, or what events you've been through, or um, and so the why of that is just that it's something that's very simple, and it's also very inexpensive. It's like if it's done peer to peer, it's free. You don't have to hire a practitioner or a professional for it. You can do it between friends or family members, and so I think, and it's got so many health benefits, both physiological and mental, that it's something that I feel like is really um, a good place for us to focus some of our energy and looking at public policy. And I think actually beyond that, like for me, looking at like the next 20, 30, 40 years, it seems like we're maybe going in a direction where there is a lot of upheaval in terms of climate, and it's like we're going to need to figure out ways to come together and take care of each other, not just because we may get ourselves to the point where we have fewer resources, but also a lot of grief and trauma and loss. It's like, I mean, I think about like, people who lose their homes in fires or floods, or, it's like, what if you were having a severe drought and you had to like pick up and move to a different part of the country, and you were away from your home and your family. I mean, people do experience that all the time over the world, and it's just now starting to hit the West a little bit more. And so I think that we're going to need ways to take care of each other and connect, and really help each other through some of the upheaval and changes that I think we're going to be going through.
Yeah, I hear you. And healthcare workers aren't supposed to touch people
I
with
know.
empathy. You can touch them medically, but not
Yeah.
with empathy, or just to put a hand on the shoulder, or mental
Yeah.
health providers, or um
Yeah.
I in listening, as you were speaking to possible outreach, when I was working in the city of Philadelphia as a sexuality consultant for the developmentally disabled, I was able to get massage into the work shops. Like some of the folks that were higher um, abilitied, they could go to workshops during the day. Well, I convinced one workshop to have a room where they could come in, and it wasn't me who did the touching, because
Right.
I was the sex consultant, and that was weird enough.
Right.
Start touching on their clients and
You don't want to give them the wrong idea about it, right?
I mean, I
Right.
was already in trouble because I was making the house parent staff take the gay people to the gay pride parades
Oh
and
my God.
take
I
them to,
you were telling me this story the other day, and I was just like, wow, this is amazing. So anyways, I apologize. I
yeah,
interrupted.
no, but and the cross dressers, they had to take them to the local thrift store and get the guys their earrings or pocketbooks. I
Oh
mean,
my God, I love it.
it was all part of this, diversity conversation in the 90s, which was like,
A
woo,
whole different thing
real
than it
different
is
thing.
now.
But
Yeah.
I was able to get a massage therapist in with a chair massage. And they actually
Mm,
got credentialed. They started a system where folks to come in and get a special certification to work with our DD, or now I think it's called ID, intellectually disabled.
I love that. It's
Isn't
so,
it great? So
yeah,
that's what you're doing, though. That's what you're looking at, bringing back this conversation that was lost.
right.
It was lost in the Bush eras. When Bush came in, they did away with all these extra social programs. I left because they took away some of the programs I was, dear to my heart. And
Oh, it's such a shame. I
uh,
mean, it sounded like you were just doing incredible work with it. And I like one of my favorite quotes from you that I say to people all the time is that you can't heal people just from the neck up. It's amazing. I was actually a few weeks ago, I was on the West Coast visiting my family, and I went to see my friend Barbara, who's like my second mother, and she was yeah, she lives a pretty isolated life. She lives kind of off the grid, and while she lives around people, like, they're pretty distant from each other. And so every time I go see her, I'll hug her and I'll touch her and I'll hold her and, like stroke her hands and her hair. And she'll tell me afterwards, she'll be like, that sustains me for months after you come, just to have that. And it's so important for us as humans, to make us feel connected and to understand that we belong. And
and
um,
that's that touch that's deeper than the skin we were talking
yeah,
about earlier.
yeah, I've
That,
actually been reading a book the past couple of weeks by an Irish philosopher, Richard Carney, who wrote a whole book about touch from a philosophical standpoint. It's really good. I've been meaning to send you the link for it.
yes, do.
So
Not the
yeah. So can we talk a minute? Because I'm sure it'll be something interesting for viewers. Can we talk a bit about like how to re-enter the world of human touch after the pandemic?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is something I've been thinking about a lot and having conversations with people about, and I'm pretty surprised there's, I have a ton of friends who are just like, 2 weeks past my shot on Friday, come over and get a hug from me. I have a lot of people like that in my world, but then I have other people who are like, yeah, I'm not so sure about this. It just feels really weird. I don't know. It's like it it actually, like, we human beings are so adaptable, and it was like we kind of adapted to this place of no touch for pretty quickly. And I think it's, I guess the first thing to know is for people who are feeling like that, that it's like you are definitely not alone. There are a lot of people who are not ready to share physical contact with other human beings, and I think you have to be okay with that and be okay with setting your boundaries, and do so unapologetically, with the, and don't be ashamed of it. It's just you kind of get to go at your pace, and it may take you some time to do it. And if you're in the opposite boat, if you're somebody who really, really, really wants touch, to realize that not everybody is going to feel that way, and to really ask people, would you like a hug, before just going in for it, because not everybody is going to be able to. The second thing I would say, so and if you're is like, I don't ever want another human being to touch me again. Okay. As long as you can set your boundaries around it, you don't, I'm not here to convince you otherwise. So, the second part of it is, if you do want to go back to the world of human touch, to kind of think about and analyze what your barriers for it might be. It might be that you don't have friends or family members who are touchy-feely. It may be that you had a bad experience with it growing up, that you have some trauma around touch. It could be You don't know who to ask, how to ask, what to ask for, all these kinds of things. And so I think when you're able to pinpoint where it is that you're getting stuck on it. Oh, one that I've heard from a lot of people is they're still, even if they've been vaccinated, they're still not sure about how the virus is transmitted and if they can still get it. So that kind of stuff might have to be thought about or worked through. I mean, if you're like, okay, you want to hug, let me see your vaccine card, then, that's totally fine. Or, continuing to do it outdoors, hug people outdoors while you're masked and, have your faces pointed a different way, figure out kind of how to make it as safe for yourself as possible. Another thing that I would recommend, like something that I thought about a lot during the pandemic is, so a lot of us were touch deprived even before the pandemic. And one of the ways that we were really getting touch was in a transactional way, whether that was a professional massage or, getting your hair cut and having your hair shampooed or getting a pedicure or something. And so that might feel better to some people, a little bit less intimate than touching a friend or somebody that you know. And like especially like pedicures are super great, even if you're not getting your toes painted, just to go and have somebody rubbing your feet, just because it's like they're all the way at the other end of your body. And it's a little bit less intimate. But I think if you go into it with this idea of that it's still going to be nurturing for you, then I think that it can serve the purpose. If you specifically go and say, okay, I'm just going to let somebody else take care of me and allow myself to receive touch, then it might make it a little bit easier to go um, out into the world with your friends. And then the final thing I would say is just to really trust your body, to be able to, I mean, a lot of us are very disconnected, our head and our body. It's like we don't necessarily know what we're feeling in our body and how we're feeling. But one of the things I've noticed a lot about working with touch over the years is, it's like we have all these narratives and all these stories in our heads and all these excuses and reasons and stuff. And then it's like, if you can work through, like jump over all those hurdles, and then you like actually have somebody like touching your hand or your hair, like people are like, oh, that feels good. So it's like if you can get to that place where you'll kind of like listen to your body and let your body take over, I think it's good. And if you're specifically wanting more very focused or specific touch in this way that, feels very nurturing and tender, past kind of a hug, hello, or goodbye from a friend, like if you want to get to the point where you can be cuddle buddies with friends or what have you. I wrote a book about it. that actually is teaching people how to approach this idea of sharing touch with your friends in a way that um, creates a solid framework to be able to do that and to be able to have more of it. Oh God, was it last week? 2 weeks ago, I went over to a friend's house. We had kind of been cuddle buddies prior to the pandemic, and she and I had both gotten vaccinated. And I went over there for dinner, and we spent like an hour just snuggled up on her bed and talking afterwards. And it was so sweet to be able to go back into that space with people, because I was one of the people who didn't have that during the pandemic. I would hug people, but to be able to really like spend some time snuggled up with somebody is wonderful. And I'm guessing there's probably a lot of people out there who would like to be able to do that with friends, but don't have the opportunities or don't know how to create that dialogue or that conversation. Oh, and finally, if that's something that you really want and you can't get it from friends or family, then there's certainly a lot of the professional cuddle parties and stuff. Those people are starting to open their businesses back up, and so that there'll be opportunities for that as well. So
Yeah, and do you speak to some of those groups in the book. It's called Somebody Hold Me, which is an absolutely incredible title.
Oh, thank you.
Just perfect. And the resources, you have some resources in here.
Yeah, yeah, I do. There's a list of different professional cuddlers and professional cuddle organizations out there, and you can just Google professional cuddler in your city if you wanted to as well, and just kind of see who's working out there. There's also it was very interesting. I don't know, did you try this during the pandemic? There are people who are offering virtual cuddling sessions.
Yeah,
I got to be a guinea pig for one of them, and it's not quite the same, but it was definitely it was very sweet and tender, and came at a really good time for me. And so there's that, and that you can do with somebody anywhere in the world. You don't need to be in a specific city. So yeah.
yeah. We actually have a practitioner, Indigo Dawn, who worked with us with our clients online,
Really?
so that we could at least teach them some tools to get in touch with their own sensations.
Yeah.
That if you're not living from the neck down,
Mhm.
so it helps to get some guidance and tools and techniques on how do you awaken the skin hunger,
Yeah.
but also the endorphins and the oxytocin and all that good juicy internal
Yeah.
chemical stuff that happens, and you can
Uh-huh.
listen it for yourself, you know.
Yeah, actually, I wrote a piece. I think it's on the health and spirituality website. I think it came out like around last June about self touch for the for the touch hungry. During it was still the beginning of the pandemic, and that's actually that's a really great point that I forgot to make, is that you can play with it with yourself a little bit. Whether that's with a body brush, or just your hands, or pulling a blanket around yourself really tight and giving yourself kind of a self hug. That's actually a super effective one.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so yeah, there's definitely ways to kind of start easing back into this world of human connections. So yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I wish you were here so I could give you a hug right now. You gotta, we should make a plan for you to come back up, and
Before you leave, for sure.
yeah, definitely.
We'll go to a restaurant.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Always a bonus.
Yep.
All right, Tiff. Well, thank you so much, and good luck in your journey with your
Thank you.
next adventure. But still, come back and do a video for us.
I totally will.
We
I'd be
can,
happy to come back and do videos for you anytime.
okay.